Is it possible that some people don't have a soul? The well-known hypnotherapist Dolores Cannon discovered something strange during her sessions. She would put people into a trance, and they would talk about past lives and even experiences of living on other planets. But Dolores identified a special type that seems particularly frightening: background people. According to Cannon, these are beings that outwardly look like people but lack a soul. They are supposedly created by the collective consciousness to play roles in our reality, helping us gain experience. They can be compared to extras in movies. They exist, but their only task is to support the main characters. Have you ever met such people?
No, I haven't encountered individuals like that, because every person is just a fragment of the original source. A person without a soul is a corpse, a dead body. They simply cannot be alive in any way. So all these elaborate and delusional fantasies about how certain individuals among us are uniquely chosen, while everybody else is just a mindless robot. No, that is simply not true. It is an absolute truth that every living person on this planet possesses a soul. Of course, there are unique and rare situations when the spirit of a deceased individual is present inside a human physical body, but this is typically the direct result of complex magical rituals performed intentionally. In other words, the world isn't just set up this way. This is a manipulation, a distortion of reality. There are very few people who know about this method, who possess these techniques. It is not as if there is a person living and suddenly, somehow they no longer have a soul. A soul, you are an inseparable part of us. It is what makes us fragments of the primordial consciousness. It is what gives us vitality. It is what gives us the ability to perceive. Without a soul, you wouldn't be able to perceive or experience anything at all. And death is essentially nothing more than when you, as a piece of matter, become separated from this soul. People who can see clearly actually observe these natural processes. They have no doubts about it. You see, what is so special about hypnosis? It's that you can suggest absolutely anything to suggestible people, and they will wholeheartedly believe this to be true, until they eventually emerge from the state of hypnosis. But there is a special type of person with a remarkably resilient and powerful psyche who, even under hypnosis, when you try to suggest something to them that doesn't match their worldview, they immediately come out of hypnosis. In other words, you can't suggest to them anything that contradicts their worldview. There are people like that too, and they are not susceptible to these influences. So hypnosis is by no means an authoritative method of research. And the fact that what Dolores says, if she actually says it, if it's not just another video made up by some neural network, if she really does say it, then she's simply mistaken.
Anton, tell me, is it possible that something is being broadcast to someone from the external environment, for example, that some civilizations are transmitting something? This information about NPCs, about the existence of soulless people? Right now, we're not talking about Dolores Cannon. Maybe she really didn't say this. But specifically, the theory about NPCs, where does it even come from? What's its origin?
Many of these ideas stem from a sense of self-importance, from pride, from attempts to elevate oneself above others, to experience a sense of superiority. And in reality, any reason can serve as a pretext for this. And people love to do this, people enjoy this process. It doesn't even have to be about esotericism. For example, someone comes into a lot of money and that's it. I'm rich and all of you are paupers. Even though just 6 months ago they were in the same position themselves. But now it's different. Now no one remembers that. Everyone else is poor and I am alive, genuine, real, while all this filth, this dust is just nothing at all. In other words, we really love to separate ourselves from society. And such separations usually end very sadly, because in reality, society won't forget you. Sooner or later, it will pull you back down. It all depends on how you behave. And what people who don't have wealth can even make up for themselves. Some kind of, my God, didn't everyone have some guy like that at school? You know, not the most, let's say, respected guy, but the one who was always coming up with endless stories, like how his dad was an FSB major, or how he spent the summer at a military training ground shooting at, I don't know, helicopters. In other words, he was constantly making up these stories. Why? Well, just to somehow stroke their own ego, to at least have some kind of impact on society, to get some kind of reaction, even if it's just a bit of surprise directed at themselves. That's why people love to make up all sorts of tall tales, just so that they can get a little bit of attention and feel superior to others. It's just plain old pride.
Are there certain individuals who have a profoundly deep disconnect, a significant rupture in the connection with their soul, and could they be called something akin to bots? Actually, they're not really bots, but rather a person who has lost contact. The soul is actually there, the spirit is there, but there's no connection.
If a person loses contact with their soul, they die. They become at peace. So the connection exists, but it can be very weak, it can be unconscious, it can be ignored. And the more a person When a person chooses to ignore their relationship with their own inner soul, the increasingly weaker, sicker, and more aggressive they will eventually become. And so on down the list. In other words, they begin to destroy themselves in that very moment. But even as they are destroying themselves, the connection still exists. It just keeps getting weaker and weaker until at some point everything is cut off. At that moment, the person has already become a dead man. So, on the one hand, the strength of the connection with one's soul varies. That's an obvious fact, but as long as there is at least some form of this connection, first of all, it means you're still alive, and secondly, you can restore all of this. And the soul is very happy when a person finally starts to pay attention to it, interacts with it, tries to feel it, perceive it, become aware of it, to come into contact with it. These are very beautiful, very intimate, very profound processes. There are no intermediaries in these processes. It's impossible to do this simply through intermediaries. So don't be deceived if someone offers to establish a connection with your soul for you. It's impossible to do, technically speaking. Because you and your soul are one single entity. And
how exactly can you establish this contact? What needs to be done? Maybe there are some practices or methods.
The very first, the most easily understandable and the most obvious thing is that you truly need to strive to direct your attention, your very own focused attention, towards your heart, our ordinary, physical, beating human heart. And even at this early stage, you can already find yourself stumbling simply due to a significant lack of foundational knowledge. This happens because if we take a standard school anatomy textbook and open it up, there is usually a very nice, bright, and colorful picture that clearly places the heart right in the center of the chest, specifically in the breast area. Furthermore, if we look at some popular movies or observe famous actors and singers, we notice that when they want to show something deeply heartfelt, they almost always gesture with their hands like this to emphasize their feelings. But the heart isn't there, it never was there. Never in the entire history of humanity has the heart been located there. The heart is actually here, in the middle. It takes up a significantly large amount of space in the lower part of the chest cavity. And so, when you carefully and physically locate your heart in its actual position, and then, through a purely geometrical perspective, determine its center, the very center of the heart, that is exactly where you have the profound opportunity to begin the process of connecting with your soul, but simply knowing exactly where it is, isn't enough by itself. There's a whole set of practices, techniques, and specific exercises, because if you just do something purely physical, found a piece of flesh, drew two lines, okay, here's the center, that's it, I've connected with my soul, it actually just doesn't really work that way. No, not at all, that is not the case. You really haven't done anything yet. There is a comprehensive and profound set of spiritual practices that a practitioner performs, and through them they move into the very depths of their heart, where the heart is no longer just a mere physical piece of flesh, but a vast multidimensional object. And the point of passage is called bindu, the bindu in the heart. Well, in order to perceive the bindu, you need extrasensory abilities. And to develop those extrasensory abilities, you need to practice other preliminary exercises to start training yourself in something new. Because if we draw a simple analogy with a gym, imagine that you're a total beginner who has just come to the gym for the first time, and you're immediately offered to start heavy training. A barbell with 200 kilograms just won't work. You'll probably just end up tearing up the floor. So you really have to start with actions that are manageable and realistic for you. That is, you look for energy at your fingertips, you look for little channels that flow inside your physical body, and shins. These vital energy centers are located both along the main central line and in many other specific areas, like the 6 distinct centers in the liver, the center in the stomach, and those in the lungs, and little by little, step by step, they develop. By developing your skill of extrasensory perception, by developing your ability to sense, to feel, not just energy. Little by little, you begin to gain the ability to find within yourself this point called bindu, and by immersing your attention and your consciousness there, you find your soul. Again, that's only if you actually need it. If you try to get in there purely technically, like, now I'm going to look there and everything will happen for me. No. If you just look there, nothing will happen because you'll still be in your head. You actually need to manage to slip, to fall, to drop, to really move yourself there. And that is when the true magic happens, which is called making a deep connection with your soul.
And what does that feel like? What does a person feel at that moment? And how can you even tell that real contact happened? And it's not just something a person imagined.
It's very simple. If you're trying to figure it out, then nothing has happened to you. There's no way to understand it. You can only experience it. When you've experienced it, you have not the slightest doubt. In that moment, you manifest and gain a profound awareness. This awareness, it comes from the silence. It's like intuition, like a sudden insight, or like something surfacing from deep within. After this flash, you will no longer feel the need to run and ask, did that really happen to me or not? But if you do run to ask afterwards, was that really it? That means it definitely wasn't it, because if it didn't happen in that flash, then consciousness wasn't really there. As a matter of fact, there is a specific mechanism that enables me to communicate clearly to a large audience that we are all fragments of the original source. As long as we play in the external world, and as long as our attention is deeply preoccupied with material things, we have no way of remembering our true nature. It is very important to understand and fully recognize that we are not training our spirituality. Rather, we are simply remembering our spirituality. Because the original source is flawless in every aspect. It is absolutely flawless. It doesn't need to train anything. It is perfect. That's precisely why it initiates these games, dividing itself into multiplicity with limited abilities for memory and perception. If it didn't do this, it would immediately understand, yes, I am the original one. Who is there to play with? Everywhere here is me. There would be no game, but this way, being its fragments, we forget that we are the original, we forget that we are flawless. Our capacity for perception is very limited. But when you go there to the soul, your perception begins to expand, your consciousness starts to remember its true nature. And coming into contact with your soul, there is an illumination. My God, I am the original. Where did I get carried away to? How could this even happen? Then comes a second realization. So that's it. I myself started this whole game. I was the one who decided to dive into this world of matter, which I myself created. But this has to be experienced. Just because you heard me, and even if you agreed with me, it doesn't give you the opportunity for this kind of illumination. Illumination only happens from coming into conscious, purposeful contact with your soul. And these encounters also have intensity. You might come into contact and feel warmth in your heart, in the lower part of your chest. You might come into contact and experience a surge of love. Just for the whole universe, simply love, it comes out of nowhere. You're not loving something specific, you're loving as a state of being, and then it fades away. And you might come into contact with your soul with such intensity that there's such a powerful flash of consciousness, you remember your true nature. And I always came here to play and even to do it all by myself. And after that, a person will never be the same again. He will never again fight for some absolutely illusory values that at that moment simply fall apart. But in order to do this, you need to practice. And this practice isn't as simple as snapping your fingers, it's a bit more difficult.
A great many people happen to touch upon this specific point, and they experience a profound sense of overwhelming bliss, a feeling of total unity. But then they come out of the practice, for example, and then gradually immerse themselves back once again into the ordinary world and completely forget all about it. So how exactly do you find the right balance here? Because it turns out that when interacting with the world, it just doesn't seem to work. To hold on to this heartfulness of yours.
Yes, because the whole world is designed so that you don't hold on to your heartfulness. The whole world is designed to make you immerse yourself in illusion. It is precisely the same kind of thing, absolutely identical to what a person does when they want to play high-end computer video games. Huge multi-billion-dollar corporations invent a vast array of sophisticated technologies, so that you forget about this world and immerse yourself in virtual reality. And this is in high demand, and people gladly immerse themselves in it. They do all sorts of things there because there's no criminal code, there's no administrative code. You launch some local game and do whatever you want there, and it's fun, it's a thrill, and there won't be any consequences. And then you take off those glasses and you're like, okay, fine. Well, that's it. Here everything is already serious. You have to somehow keep yourself in check. We do exactly the same thing. And there, the whole world is set up so that you absolutely don't remember that you're actually just sitting in a chair with glasses on your head. And here, on a global scale, the original does exactly the same thing. He creates a world that won't allow him to instantly remember that all of this is an illusion. This world is incredibly real. This world is incredibly attractive. Passions are manifested in this world. These passions sweep you away. But that's exactly how it was intended. This is the creator's design. Otherwise, these little parts of him wouldn't have started playing all of this. They would immediately realize, like, wait a second, yeah, this is all cardboard. It's just cartoons. What am I doing here? And that's it. That's boring. But
what is there to strive for then? So, on the one hand, we need to constantly stay in the heart and
humble ourselves.
The viewer asks, he says, I want to be in goodness all the time, but the world no longer interests me. But on the other hand, he needs to feed his family, to achieve some goals.
Because he is already the goal in the world. That's why he says that.
Could you elaborate, please?
If you've accepted significant responsibilities, if you've fully stepped into the role of a character in one of these many games here, and then you decide to walk away and simply run away, who exactly are you after that?
So, it turns out, if we've entered the game, say, we have a family, obligations, and then we say, we're leaving for the absolute and we'll just sit there.
You won't leave. You won't succeed. Because this reality, I'll say it again, is built in such a way that if you have debts left, unfinished business, if you've warmed others with your promises, other fragments of consciousness, they trusted you, believed in you, and you decided to betray them, they won't let you go, they'll pull you back into this world. They'll drag you out of those states. If we take monasticism, for example, or when people went into monasteries from childhood so they wouldn't even know about the existence of another world, this everyday world. Or there are people who, in this everyday world, have already done everything, have stepped into everything, gotten themselves covered in everything, and washed it all off themselves, so that there's really nothing left for them to do here. And these are predominantly much older individuals, those over 60, who have already managed to be gangsters, politicians, journeyed across the entire globe and been with women. They've interacted with men who had children, raised them, and even eventually sent them on their own way because they didn't turn out quite right. And after all that, after playing out all these various roles, settling all their debts and concluding every bit of their worldly business, the person finally says, "That's it, leave me alone. I want to discover my inner world, my true nature." He leaves somewhere out there, to the mountains, to monasteries, to caves, to a little house. He just sets up somewhere out in the middle of the steppes, and there he immerses himself within. It's not implied that he's going to come back after that. He leaves for good. This is exactly for those who don't want to leave that state, but if you're still passionate, if you've taken on obligations, if you've started a lot of sessions, let's say games with other fragments of consciousness, with other players, then yes, they won't let you go. No? They'll hold you back, they'll pull you back, they won't let you leave this game until you finish all of this, until you bring it all to an end. The only thing you can do is look for a way to balance. That is, you spend part of your time on everyday life and take care of everything here, the needs and situations that arise. And you spend part of your life on practice. But these practices are not your way of life. These practices are actions that you do in parallel with your everyday life. Just like there are people, for example, who manage corporations, control financial flows, but in the evening go to the gym and just lift some dumbbells. So this happens in parallel. They're not planning to become athletes, tomorrow. They're not planning to win championships. They do this alongside their everyday life, simply because they enjoy it. And here you do these practices simply because you enjoy them. You like them. You truly appreciate the entire creative process. This process is deeply intertwined with your everyday life. And this will continue as long as you still have some passions, as long as you still have some responsibilities.
Listen, this is a fascinating and effective strategy because you can handle multiple tasks simultaneously in parallel. You can finish up some unfinished business while staying in practice, all while never forgetting about your own soul.
Yes, and the more you remain aligned within this particular state of being, the faster you manage to live your life. Because interacting with your soul, first of all, unlocks and releases an incredibly vast abundance of resources, power, potential, and vitality. You can use any word here. And having this resource, it truly becomes significantly more effortless for you to achieve and fulfill your whims, needs, and your deepest desires. You just check them off one by one, and at some point, even while pursuing various material goods and external successes, at some point you realize that everything you've achieved for yourself now, everything you wanted, or part of what you wanted, it can no longer satisfy you. It no longer brings you any sense of fulfillment. It already has that hollow, cardboard-like emptiness to it. That is, the deeper you immerse yourself in your heart, the more obvious the external animation of the outside world becomes to you. But this doesn't happen instantly. It happens gradually. If you still having deep-seated passions say, "No, I'm going into spirituality," and sit down to meditate, your passions will inevitably knock you right out of it. Because when your potential grows, when your strength increases, all your passions will also become much more intense along with your potential. You can't strengthen your spirituality and just sweep your passions under the rug somewhere. It won't work. They will also gain power. Either you break away from spirituality or you simply go insane. You get torn apart. But if you keep your balance, yes, you practice, you spend quality time with your inner soul, and then that's it. You want this, you want that. Your eyes light up and you go to make it happen right now. You have tons of energy, you're balanced, you're harmonious, you have high vitality. You grab this, you grab that, you grab a third thing. Yes, that's mine. Grab something else. Yes, that's mine too. And this is also mine, but it's already done. It's already cardboard. And that's why the more spiritual a person becomes, the closer they come to their soul, the more indifferent they become to the external world. That's why holy people are generally absolutely unflappable. A war has started. Well, Lord, when has there ever not been one? Another apocalypse, yet another announcement. Yes, I hear you. His consciousness is already on completely different planes. The external world no longer agitates him. But you have to grow into this. And this can't be achieved with just one practice or with a single exercise or mantra. You go through your days, spending a significant part of your life trying to stay perfectly balanced between your deep spirituality and the demands of everyday life, and you really start to notice that the more you continue to live in this specific mode, even when you are in balance, the duller, more repetitive, and far less interesting your ordinary everyday life eventually becomes over time. It fades more and more in your eyes, and in reality, it's like your passion.
95% of people don't even realize that within them lies a power that grants access to any possibility, a successful business, strong relationships, health, and self-fulfillment. It allows you to hear your soul and remember your true nature, your divine nature. This power is your energy. When it is blocked, you feel tired and upset. But when your energy flows freely and without obstacles, you are full of strength and capable of achieving any goal. Everyone can feel the movement of energy in their body. Are you ready to see this for yourself right now? I've prepared a practice where, in just 3 minutes, you'll become aware of the state of your energy and be able to activate the inner power that has been blocked for many years. The practice is available for a limited time. Right now, follow the link provided below the video and unlock the incredible source of power within yourself.
Earlier you said that passions can actually increase, the opposite effect. For example, a person starts working with energy, doing practices, and instead their passions just surge.
That happens if you avoid everyday life and run off to a monastery to sit and say, I'm in my little house, I'm Om, 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 Om. The practices give results, energy and strength will surge, but mostly, what kind of people end up in monasteries? For example, someone tries to get into family life, but they have no idea what a family is, no clue how to build relationships. He messed things up there, had a child, and after 7 months said, that's it. I've seen all of this in one place. That's it, I'm going into spirituality. I'm not interested in material life. You haven't even touched this material life. You haven't enjoyed it. You failed your family, you're broke, and your parents are let down. So you say, that's it, I'm going into spirituality. He sits in the temple, initially feeling scared and nervous. Little by little, the practices show results, and he gradually begins to open up. Gradually, he starts to gain strength, power, might, and then all these passions start to surge in him, like, wait, I still haven't made any money, and I still need to sort things out with my parents, you know. That is, sincerity begins to awaken in you, love begins to awaken, conscience begins to awaken. And so, as all this awakens, you're like, I want more of this, I want more of that. Then in the end, I had plans. I was planning to live off my business and fly on my own jet, but here I am sitting and meditating. Why? Because the power has started to flow. You feel the possibility to make all this happen. If you end up with adequate masters in a real tradition, not an imaginary one, then the teacher tells you, go and realize yourself, that's it, I have nothing more to tell you. And you go and realize yourself, just don't lose this opportunity to connect with your soul. If you miss this opportunity, then reality slowly starts to pull you back in again. It starts to crumple you, that's why balance is needed. And so, when you burst into your world with this power, with this might, you're like, okay, we're here, where do I make money? You start moving that way, and suddenly, over there, a promotion, 2 promotions, bonuses, and you quickly use this money to plug all your mistakes and problems. Your wife, now ex, or maybe not, your child has forgotten or even hates you or barely remembers you from when he was little. You quickly fix everything, balance it all out, everything becomes harmonious, everything is good and calm, and you start enjoying your life. And then you put your life on pause and enjoy your practices. Then you put your practices on pause and go back to enjoying your life. And then at a certain point in your journey, you notice that you can't enjoy life anymore because it starts to feel more and more dull. But the practices you do make you experience such states, such profound feelings, that no one has ever even had the chance to explain to you yet. And then you eventually come back and say, listen, Mashan or Guru, I was practicing right here and I saw this and that. What is it really? And he says to you with a gentle smile, haha, well, it is finally time to continue your spiritual learning once again. But now you return not as someone who ran away from everyday life like a coward, but as a truly worthy, deeply conscious and dedicated sadhaka. That is exactly how it happens, at the very least in my tradition. So
where exactly should our viewers start, for example, with the specific practices that you offer?
Absolutely everything that I have already completed and recorded for you. These include courses, as well as mantra practices. There are also our regular weekly meetings in the Practitioners Club, and our special Sunday gatherings, and all the answers to your questions. That is to say, every single person who studies with my comprehensive courses has the unique opportunity to ask me a question live on Sundays. In other words, I fully support those dedicated practitioners who consistently follow the system. Anton Mikhailovich. The system that I also received? During the learning process, we call it shlevit, just to make it easier to refer to. Few people know what shlevit is, but already some number of people know who? Anton Mikhailov. We practice diligently, we develop our skills, and our community has already grown significantly in size. And this is exactly the same comprehensive system in which I was personally trained. It's just that now it has been scaled up, the internet is connected, whereas in previous eras there was no internet. Back then it was a temple, it was a kula, it was a group of people. Here it's a slightly different, already more technological, let's say, system of learning. It all works. This way, little by little, you can get involved in all of this, come into contact with it. There are also masterclasses held periodically where I demonstrate practices and explain things in more detail, more thoroughly. That is, I'm not trying to lure anyone in, with those kinds of slogans like first pay and then you'll find out what you get. No, that's not the case. There are open events, people come to these events and they practice together with me right away live. And those who like it, those who feel drawn to it, join in right away, and then we start working on a completely different level. Regularly.
Thank you. Friends, follow the links in the description and get acquainted with the practices. Also, leave comments, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.